This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Now if I can see. All right. So everybody like fast cars? Cool cars?
I do.
I know, me too. So this was my quote, by the way. What a drag the race would be if all looked and performed the same. So of course there was a pun intended on purpose, right? For drag race. But think about it. Think about creativity and how it was born, whether you're, Ford and you decided you wanted to have a car and then the other car's gonna look cooler than the other car and it's gonna go faster. But what if they were all the same car? And I did this on purpose to talk about at a time where we are in nationwide about looking at diversity and creativity and obstacles and opportunity. So I think there's lots of cool things here. This is one of my favorites. I want this pink Chevy. Okay, while I've got you guys here, can anybody tell me, and Tim Gander, you may not speak, can anybody tell me what year and what kind of car this yellow one is?
It's a Corvette, but I don't know what the year.
67.
Joe guessed 67. Anybody else? Bill?
I was going to say 57 also.
Well, you said 57. Joe thought 67.
No, it says 57.
Yeah, it's actually a 59 Corvette Roadster. Isn't that slick? Cord,
Yeah.
can you like get me one of those? Like,
Yeah, Fast Lane is right up the street.
Fast Lane.
You're in bonus.
Doesn't your uncle like own that?
He did years ago. He owned the building and the real estate, not the company,
Oh, dang.
but no longer.
And anybody tell me what this is? Where'd they all go?
That's a Bel Air. Oh, which one? You talking about the pink or the green?
The green?
Charger? Challenger.
How did that happen?
Barracuda.
It actually is a Dodge Charger. And obstacles meet opportunity. What's this?
Caddy.
I thought it was a Caddy, but it is not. Tim said, don't you know? And it's a 57 Chevrolet. Okay. And then we have, are all obstacle roadblocks or are they stepping stones? So I kind of feel like we're in a great place to take opportunities and make something of them, not roadblocks. So tell me what is this? Anybody know? What is it, Tim? Tim says it's a Lamborghini.
I think it's a GT 500.
I don't really know what that is.
Oh.
This one I don't know.
That'd be a Lamborghini.
Ferrari.
Tim says trust him, it's a Lamborghini.
It's whatever you want it to be.
Sorry, I was just talking for 3 hours straight. Okay, and what about this one?
Convertible something.
This is one of my favorites. This is a 55 Ford Thunderbird. Love convertibles and love Thunderbirds. Okay, so let's talk about short sale workshop. Did everybody bring their predictions? I can't find my people. There's people. There you are.
Are we going to do that now?
Uh-huh.
Oh, boy.
I've just unmuted everybody. Okay, there you are. Now I can see you guys. Hey, Amy. I couldn't see before. All I could see was cars, which are kind of cool. All right, so Court, you want to start?
You want me to read? Is that what you're asking?
Well.
What predictions?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the reason we're talking about this is because we've been having conversations about, at what point will the market shift? It's got to at some point, and I would predict that it's going to sometime in the near future with the low inventory we have, and I know things are moving right along with low interest rates, but we know that at some point, all of the furloughs, all of the deferment of payments, mortgages, it's going to catch up to some people. And we don't know what the government's going to do to help people. There's been a lot of talk, but we want to be prepared. So we've been through this before. And what was very hot back then was short sales. And that's in which, to make a, short is the bank is willing to accept less than what the market will bring or what the seller owes on it if the market won't bring that value. And then there's different types of short sales and a lot of in between that. Bear with me. Go ahead, Terry.
Okay, so predictions. Anybody else want to give their ideas of what you think, where the market might be headed? Any difference? Stay hot, cold? Do you think there's going to be a need for short sales? Amy, what do you think?
Sorry, I have a truck being driven up my back. Here it is. I know, very big. I think that I'm pretty optimistic still. I think the market's going to change depending on what happens with this election, but I think there's going to be short sales, but I'm still optimistic. I feel like this pandemic is a big enough problem that not to say we want government assistance, but I think that there's going to be enough done, hopefully, to subsidize people. This isn't just a small thing. I think this was a big thing. So,
thank you. Jennifer? Hey, Jordan. Jennifer, what do you think? What are your predictions for the next?
Hello.
Hi.
I predict that we, of course, will have, like Court said, short sales, things certain people might go into foreclosure or such, but I don't see it being anything like last decade. So, like 08. So I see there's still, I mean, at least personally, I still have tons of buyers needing a place to go. So they got to go somewhere.
I can go.
Okay, Joe, go ahead.
So obviously being new to, I was trying to do a little research, and I kind of agree with Amy in the fact that there's a bunch of factors. So Court, you mentioned like the coronavirus, right? And the furlough, and people lost their incomes and their jobs and, you know, potentially their homes. I don't think we've seen the result of what that's going to look like yet. So, and then you've got the instability of the stock market that could have a negative impact on it. You know, we've got the election time, and that could cause uncertainty with the housing market as well. But then you got the optimistic side is the numbers that are at an all-time high. So how does that combat with what's going on and the low inventory? So I think all in all, that uncertainty could cause a big problem, or it could end up kind of balancing itself out. But at some point in time, all good things must come to an end, right? Like something eventually has got to shift at some point. So I don't foresee it being a major crash, but the downturn thing, I don't know if they can see me.
Can you see Joe?
Yeah, I can see Joe.
Okay, I turned my laptop.
So yeah, being new, the uncertainty is there, but you know, I don't know with the way the market is right now, how all those things, the coronavirus, the stock market, the election, I don't know what that's going to really do, I guess, at the end of the day. But
can you hold up your notes just for a second? See, look, he came prepared with notes. Can you see that?
yeah.
Way to go, man.
Hey, thanks.
I
buddy.
can't see.
You researched it.
Go ahead. It was like, do you want to go?
I just got it in my head.
Do you want to share?
Sure. You see me?
What's up, Tim?
He's like a shrunken head in the background.
Can you see him? Go
Yeah, I
ahead.
see him. Looks like the same bald guy I saw last time.
There you go. Anyway, I probably see this happening in 2021 to start, because you're going to have 6-7 months in here where people are behind, and then the banks are going to go ahead with, I want all my money now. Then we're going to look at 90 days out before they can start foreclosing. So I basically see this happening starting maybe 2021. Nothing real drastic. There's gonna be a lot, because these people can't recover. They don't have jobs yet. They're still not back to work with a lot of this. So that's where I see it at.
And hey, if we can, I just want to point out that I think it's going to be the same as it was in 2006, 7, 8, 9, is that all real estate markets are local. The pandemic we're dealing with obviously is national, but it affects everybody differently based on where they are. So obviously our real estate market has not been impacted nearly as much as some other markets. So there's a lot of variables here, but I just wanted to point that out, that we have to remember real estate is local.
Good point. Bill?
Well, I'm kind of with Tim. I think it's going to be a little longer before we start seeing the effects of all the unemployment and people losing their houses because they can't, pay their bills. I also think it could be a slight uptick more because the pandemic's getting a little worse again. And I just saw 1.5 million more people were out of work this week. So, but we will see. Like Coach just said, it's local. So let's see what happens around here compared to the national average and everything.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to repeat that because it was a little bit garbled for some who couldn't hear. So you said you just read that 1.5 million people are out of work this week was the average that you heard?
Right, for me, please.
And he said earlier that he kind of agreed with what Tim was saying about when it might happen, right? Is that okay?
But just something to point out in that conversation, if there's 1.5 million out of work, how many of those are getting the unemployment benefits, and are those more than what they were getting going to work? So if they're getting the money, maybe the economy still moves, they're still spending money. And that's the whole point of doing all these things, these economic recoveries, to keep the confidence up and keep people spending money, because that's what makes everything move.
Absolutely. My point was that starting this week, the unemployment is no longer available to anybody. So if 1.5 people went out of work this week, file for claims, they're not going to get that extra $600 a week. So hopefully Congress can do something about it and get it, straightened out. Have a bunch of foreclosures.
Okay. Pat Crew. Hi. What do you think?
Hi there. I agree. I think it's going to be next year, but I also do think it's going to be a bigger hit because I know a lot of people in the lower type jobs, as far as like fast food, and the fast food has realized that they can pay 3 people instead of 10 and not open the inside, and they're really sticking with that a lot. And now they'd have to have extra people to even be able to open the lobby, because now you need more employees than you did before. So I think just companies, I've even heard, and I don't know if it's true, that Walmart's never going to be 24 hours again. So there's just going to be a lot of jobs out there that were before that aren't going to be now. And like one of you said, that eventually the banks are going to start saying, okay, we're done riding this out, we need our money. And then I think we're going to be at short sales status. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. Layla?
So like Joe, I did my research, obviously, because I've been a realtor for a short time. But from what it sounded like is right now we're doing great. Like it's actually pretty good right now. And I listened to the co-founder of Zillow, and he was saying that there's been so many more listings coming up, and we're taking like a bounce back sooner than anybody would have thought. There's been thousands of construction jobs that like they've been hiring, which in turn means building more homes. Since the rates have been so low, they're talking about there's a lot of younger people buying homes right now, which it used to be, the banks are letting them buy homes, or the lenders are letting them buy homes, which in turn, they said like the cash, when people had cash and cash offers would be more appealing to them. Now they're just kind of evening that out with loans, if that makes sense. But But with that being said, I also think because the coronavirus has been such a wishy-washy thing, it's okay now everything's getting better, like people going back to work, and okay now 1.5 million people are out of work, and out of those we don't know who's going to come back. So I also think that in 2021 is when we're going to see it hit the hardest. And I think it's still going to be a roller coaster then too, because it's literally going to be a copy of what it was this year, but the effects version.
Thank you. Cassandra. Hi.
Hi. I don't really know. I'm kind of like back and forth between how I feel because the coronavirus has been so wishy-washy, that everything gets better and then they pull the reins back again and then things start closing down again. And so that's going to obviously affect people's incomes and the loans. So I definitely agree that I think it'll be next year when we see major impact from it. But I'm just not really sure, honestly. I could see it going either way with people. A lot of jobs are shifting to like permanently be work from home. I have friends who worked for like Express Scripts and Square and like big companies like that aren't looking at sending people back. So those people might push them more to get a new home, being that they're there all the time. But then on the flip side, you're gonna have people who, one parent might not be able to go back to work and they might need to sell their house and get a smaller house because they can't afford that mortgage anymore. So I can kind of see it going different routes for different people.
Thank you. And to that point, I've recently read that because of so many people working from home, that home offices and pools are now a very attractive feature, where before pools used to sometimes detract, and now people are all over, like even the Watsons, the pools are behind. So Ashley and Zach tried to order a pool about 30 days ago or 45 days ago. And the soonest the pool can be installed is October. Like they're out of stock. They don't even have.
Well, because all the subdivision pools some are closed, some are open, the public pools. I mean, you used to be afraid of people peeing in them. Now you got to be afraid of a coronavirus. So it makes sense.
Right. Jeremy.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Good.
I'd say that Court is right on. There's a ton of different dynamics that it's going to affect here, but at the end of the day, real estate is local, and it's how your specific market's been affected. Some of the different dynamics that are going on. I mean, we have the unemployment that's going on. We have the election this year. Pumping money into the economy can affect inflation. We have these moratoriums. There's many other things that come into play, but I think that without a doubt, before the pandemic, you naturally have foreclosures. Unfortunately, there are foreclosures that happen, and with the pandemic, things have been stopped. Courts have been held up. Things have been backed up. And so I think that we're going to see a flood in the market on foreclosures, but that's just because of the ones that we had before the pandemic that has just been backed up and kind of piled up, and we might see them at once. And I do believe that there are people that are ready to pull the trigger on that. But I think that right now, the reason that we see prices so high is because the inventory is obviously low. And so that's drawing the prices up. And as things start to come into the market, it will change the fluctuation in prices, but everything is local and there's so many different things going on. The government's bear hugging our economy right now. Anybody that's has been infected in any way, and I'm not a lender, but I mean, you can go to the banks, you can go to the credit card companies, you can go to the people with your car loan, and I mean, they have a huge heart, and there's stuff written in there through the CARES Act that if you've been affected in any way, you can get 180 days forbearance, whether the bank wants to work with you or not. That's what it said in the CARES Act. And every bank's differently, is going to handle it differently. It's also how you handle your relationship with the bank and how you, I guess, answer their questions that they have. But they'll typically give you 180 days, and then if you request 180 days, they'll give you an additional 180 days, which can prolong the inevitable, or it can give people a great reserves, depending on how people approach finances. but there's so many different tools, and I think that we're going to see a flood in the market with foreclosures at some point whenever the government decides to quit bear hugging us. And that will be great, but not everybody's going to see that opportunity. I think that it will be moved on quick. And then I also think there'll be another opportunity after, late 2021 and then moving forward, because it always takes a long time trickle down effect. Everybody wants to keep their place, and it takes a long time to decide, hey, we aren't able to do this anymore. Let's, think a plan. And I hate to talk like that, but it's hard conversations, and sometimes it draws out and it takes longer than we think. And so I see it, the great news is that with the interest rates low, money's almost free, because typically if you can borrow between a 2.5 or 3% lower, if you're staying below the 3% inflation rate, then you're borrowing money at a great rate. But anyway, I don't want to talk forever. I think that Court's right on that real estate is local and everybody's going to be affected differently. So just, be ready.
Thank you, Jeremy. Sarah.
Actually, before the coronavirus and before even an election was a thought this year in the very beginning, being new, Cortland, I would say a lot of times, like, the market can't stay like this forever. And we were talking, or what I thought was more on the side of that the buyers would kind of get tired of losing all of these bids and kind of come to a halt on things. Like, they would just kind of give up on looking for a while. I mean, and that's kind of how we thought, or I thought, or interpreted that the market would kind of do a shift change, and not so much of short sales, just as in general. As far as COVID goes, with the spikes happening on and off and in different areas, and I think it'll be a while before we see anything as far as that goes, because it's not really under control. And so I think if we're going to see anything first, it'll probably be a reaction from elections. Just like Jeremy said, the courts are behind. So if we're going to see a spike on anything from that, it's going to be from what was already in foreclosure first. And we'll see all that kind of hit at one time before we see anything from the COVID. I think it'll be closer to probably the end of 2021 before they get a grip on everything from COVID. That's too many people at one time.
When you said buyer frustration, is kind of how I summarized it. I've also thought we'd have that with sellers, the ones that don't want to sell their home because they have no place to go. So I thought that would slow things down for sure too. Lori Lincoln. Thank you, Sarah.
Hello. So probably because I live with a very huge optimist, my husband JJ, for those of you that know him. He's positive about everything. I don't know. I feel like most, not all of the people who are without jobs are people who live with their parents or are renting somewhere. And so I feel like it might not have as big of an effect on the housing market as potential. A lot of people with office jobs are working from home, so they're still getting their paycheck. And that does affect the economy because they're not using their car. So all the stuff that goes with that is not being bought. They're not eating out as much probably. So I know it trickles down, but I'm optimistic that it's probably going to slow down and we are going to have short sales and foreclosures, but I don't think it's going to be a big hit. That's just me.
Hey, Terry.
Yes.
Hopefully my internet, it's been spotty and we're kind of cutting out. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Before we went into the PowerPoint, I just wanted to share, I was on my coaching call Friday afternoon and we were talking about a lot of different things and shifting and which directions everything going. And he had me write down a quote, and what it said is, when you can't move forward and you can't quit, that is where you grow. And it kind of just rang a bell with me in the fact that this whole pandemic is going to change the trajectory of a lot of different businesses and industries and how things are done. So as we all move forward doing our day-to-day stuff, I'm just thinking of what is going to be the next big thing that just changes how we do business. And it's not good, bad. It's just going to be different. So this pandemic is going to bring out a whole lot of things that are going to, I think, change a lot of industries. So I don't say that to scare people. I actually think it's opportunity out of it. But basically what he says is, in that point is where you grow. So this is for us. We'll look back at this one day and go, oh my gosh, that made us do this. And I'm so happy we are here now.
Absolutely. That was actually why I did that whole car thing, which talk about all the times in people's lives that cause them to be more creative. Obstacles, opportunities, they get, things get better, things change, we get more creative. I know for myself personally, in my adult life, stay-at-home mom created lack from what I was used to. I'd always worked. Now I stayed home with children and didn't have the income. And that caused me to be more creative than I ever imagined possible, because it was never my strong suit. Just like this pandemic caused us to get real creative really quick, right? Teaching from home, creating PowerPoints, doing things that no way we ever thought we would be sitting here doing this. We just didn't. So my next slide here talks about my predictions based off of information in my research. So today's workshop is really for educational purposes, not to cause fear at all. But the bank repossessions, if you take a look here, the lenders foreclosed, which is real estate owned, on a total of 37,917 U.S. properties in the first 6 months of 2020. Now we're down 44% from a year ago to the lowest 6-month total since they began tracking in 2005. Now, if you remember that, politically speaking, Trump signed in a kind of a moratorium in March of 2020 on foreclosures. So that makes complete sense why we're down so low, 44%. But in addition, in my research, I saw where that was lifted in June. However, there's conversation of extending that 6 months. And then beyond that 6 months, they will look at the possibility of possibly another 6 months. So my projection based off of my research was we will begin to see some of these foreclosures or short sale opportunities in 2021. Maybe not a huge surge, but definitely I think by June of next year, everybody should be equipped and prepared for this kind of conversation, because I'm going to tell you from living through the 06, 7, 8, 9, 10, a lot of people lost their homes because they put their head in the sand. So I want you to be aware and pay attention and listen to people. They're afraid to tell their own family members that they're having a hard time. It's embarrassing. Nobody wants to tell a soul that they couldn't make their mortgage payment. I mean, think about it. If you couldn't make your mortgage payment, would you get on here and tell us today that you couldn't? Think about the people you don't tell that could help you. So I think this is where we need to be proactive, maybe towards the end of the year, maybe with some of our marketing, that soft touch, not where we're up in people's business and creating fear, but doing some marketing that allows people to know that, hey, we're here if this should happen to you. I was talking to Melinda, and she couldn't be on the call today because it's Dave's birthday and they had dinner plans around this time, but she has offered to do a workshop for us early September. There's a lot of information from the lender side that she brings, and they're not going to be as hard on the foreclosures, excuse me, as they were before. It's almost like before the banks could be the bad guy and they didn't care. And now they're going to be getting more kudos for being a little bit more lenient.
And Terry, I'm glad you touched on that, because I actually think this time around, well, either time around, the banks don't want to own real estate. That is not what they're in the game to do. They don't want to own it because then they got to preserve it and they got to deal with break-ins and everything else that comes with owning real estate. And then when somebody doesn't occupy it, if they go to doing evictions, now you got a vacant home that's just going to, so the banks really don't want to kick people out to the streets. So I think that they're going to be more cooperative. I think Melinda will be the expert to tell us how.
Right, and she will. So she offered, again, because there's just so much to talk about today, just with short sales and foreclosures and the why and how. And because what she mentioned, something that you guys could be talking to your clients and family and friends about, is if you took the forbearance, even on your student loan debt or your credit card or your truck payment, not just your mortgage, it's going to ding your credit. So when your credit scores begin to drop and you begin to hear people talk about that, why is their credit scores dropping? Did they accept that wonderful, you don't have to make your payment this month and last month? And so that alone is going to change some buying power. So you need to please write that down, be educated on your buyer consultations. Things that we didn't talk about, this will most likely happen, buyers. We used to say, don't go out and buy a car. Now we need to make sure we say, please don't take that forbearance on your existing payments, okay? So now we're into the conversation of why we need to be proactive to preserve their credit, to educate. I emailed you 15 pages of a handout to go along with the workshop. And the last few pages are marketing. We'll talk about that in a minute. Anything you want to add to that, Court, on being proactive?
No, I mean, that's what our initial conversation's been about, is we're all kind of saying, here's what we think might happen, but none of us have a crystal ball. And, you know, I've talked a lot about, we don't even know if short sales will be the solution like it was last time. There could be some other process. There could be a totally different way in which all this might be handled. We don't know, but why not get educated about what we do know in case it does happen?
Right, right. And so that's why I like this conversation here, is to let people know, listen, if somebody says, how's the market? Well, guess what? Before today, you might not have known that foreclosed homes are down 44% from a year ago, right? So how nice just to have that one line. How's the market? Market's doing well. What do you think is going to happen? We might see something change in 2021, but it's not going to look like 2008. It's going to be different, right? Sound like something you can say easily and confidently and be an expert in your area. To Court's point, it is local. So keep up with what you do know locally as well. Why we want to control the narrative? Well, if you look up here at this little cute character, you can be a victim. You can try to hide, put your head in the sand. You can tell yourself it's not going to happen to you. Foreclosure is not going to happen. It's not going to go. So if someone is in that position, you guys, because they've lost their job, their businesses have shut down, maybe they're self-employed and that business can't reopen, there's lots of reason it can still happen. Bad things happen to good people all the time. I'm telling you, I did cash for keys. I sat in a conference room with couples. The bank would rather offer some cash for keys, like $3,000 to $5,000, if they didn't steal, basically in stealing, the light fixtures, the appliances. If they left the home in broom swept condition, I could promise them a few $1,000s for cash for keys, because I worked for a broker at the time that we listed all Fannie Mae, HUD, and bank-owned properties. And it was very painful. It's really hard to sit across from somebody who's about to lose their home. So it's serious conversation, but you can deliver it in a manner that doesn't scare, that just said, you know what, there's options, let us help you, right? And then we'll figure that out together. But like Court said, we don't know how strict the rules are going to be, and the banks aren't really going to want it. And here, let me say this. In 2008, most of us could be upside down easy because of the 80-10-10, no PMI, 100% stated income loans, no money down. And they made it so easy that we had no skin in the game. And you could refi, cash out, pay off your cars, pay off your kids' tuition, and then you were upside down. Well, think about the market and how it's been so erratic. And sometimes in St. Charles County, specifically in 2018 and most of 19, we were almost 10% a year, not that 3 to 5 or 5 to 7, but we were at 10% a year. So there's so much equity in the homes. I don't think we're going to see the amount of short sales, but we might have to sell quickly. But there should be enough equity in the home to sell it fast, pay off the bank, and let them move on, in my opinion. So anybody want to add to that? So don't forget that when you're talking about short sales, it's different. I don't think we're going to need them like we did before.
Sarah has her
question. I have a question. It's not so much about short sales, but since we're seeing more and more people offer over asking price, like it's crazy, 15, 20, and then nixing appraisals to pay the difference and all that stuff. I'm kind of curious what it looks like if the market does change, and then there's no equity in people's homes, or, I mean, I don't know. I'm really curious on what that looks like.
Well, I have
Go ahead.
I have thoughts on that, and it's something I talk to my mom and John about all the time because they're living in a villa in Wing Haven, and they're always wanting to do upgrades and upgrade this and that. And every time they think about doing an upgrade, the most recent one is the bathroom, and they're not sure if they want to spend the money because the neighbor's home just sold for this or the neighborhood's doing this. If you're buying a home, as long as your intention is to stay there for a few years, what the market does in the next couple of years may not be relevant. So if you bought it today and you might have overpaid 5, 10, 15,000, as long as your intention is to stay for a period of time, it all should level out and it may not make any difference. It's the people who do buy something today, they're paying at the height of the market. A year from now, things shift, they're going through a divorce, God forbid, let's say, and they have to sell it. Now they might be in some trouble. So I just try to let people look at the big picture of real estate is not, if I buy it today, can I sell it next year? It should be, if I buy today, can I live in it for 5 to 10 years and make some money without losing my butt on it?
And I agree. And what I was going to add to what Sarah's comment was, or question, is I don't see us going back where we were before because there's not a mortgage meltdown.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see us losing equity in the home or it going downward, spiraling down with the values.
I think the first time home buyer price range, which she's talking about a lot, is the 250,000 and below, and they're going over asking price. I'm hopeful that those people are going to stay there for 5 years and be able to sell when the market does level out. That price range being affected way more than the 350 and above as far as over asking price and all that stuff.
And I'm not saying I'm not saying people are going in and being really unrealistic. Well, I mean, some places I'm like, really? But I think, oh, well, in 10 years, fine. It'll, like you guys say, it'll level out. But there's some areas, no offense, in St. Charles, St. Peter's, if people are getting that desperate and they're offering, and I'm like, I don't give a crap how long you live there. I don't think that'll ever level out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you guys know some of those areas. It's never going to level out, but they're so desperate. You're either going to break even or you're, yeah.
I kind of like, I see where you're at with it, because just with inventory low right now, the thing is people are trying to get into a house and they'll do whatever they'll do anything for it. And with the interest rates being as low as they are, it's almost like free money. And so the biggest thing is like long term is if the banks ever jack up the interest rates at all, which they kind of have told us, the government kind of said that interest rates should be low for the next few years, maybe 23 to 24. But think about that, when the interest rates start to go up, you can afford less. So that's another thing to consider. Right now, money's being thrown around because it's so cheap, right? And so inventory is low, money's cheap, people are paying top dollar. Think about what you can afford when interest rates are higher. You won't be able to afford as much. It's just something to think going forward. How are the banks? Because it's harder to have a higher interest rate and have prices continue to go up. It's something to consider.
Yeah, your buying power goes down, so values are going to follow that.
Well, I was just wondering because, X amount of years ago, we were all blaming the banks giving out money and no big deal. And sometimes when I hear these offers being 10, 15, 20 over, and appraisals come back to be like almost to the penny what the sale of the home is, even when it's those crazy sale numbers like, 142,997, and that's what the appraisal value ended up coming out to be too, odd, then does it ever make you want to 10 years from now, if something happens, does all the blame start going on the appraiser instead of the banks,
It could. So back in the day, a lot of people that were not in the industry believed that it was the banks, but the banks would tell you, the loan officers specifically, that it was a Dodd-Frank government issue, and they were being forced to give bad loans, paper loans to people who really couldn't qualify. So it was a push on the government's part. The appraisers, I just talked to an appraiser the other day, and they have a national data bank now, Sarah, where before they weren't as controlled. So now they put an appraisal in, it goes into the system nationally. If they make it only like a score of a 5, a bank can kick it back out again. And Melinda's going to touch on this as well. So the investors can kick it back out and say, no, we want a better score. It needs to be above a 5. Show us again how you rated this a 5, to your point. So.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we might start seeing some of the appraisals get kicked back as the money gets tighter for the banks to loan. But go ahead, Court.
Well, I was going to say that some of you may not know, being newer in the business, but the whole appraisal process changed. Now they're all in a rotation, like she said, and the lender doesn't get to pick the appraiser, doesn't get to talk to them. It used to be in the good old days, if the lender needed a certain sale price, they could kind of give a little nudge and make it happen. Now all that has been taken away. So the appraiser is a neutral third party, which makes everything more honest.
Absolutely. There's a pool there, like a secretary pool. So I already touched on this a little bit to respond. So are the homeowners underwater? Me and I would find it so odd today to have a homeowner underwater. They would have had to refi the snot out of their home to pay off everything because the money is so cheap to be underwater. But equity is just too strong right now for me to see people that are underwater and have to short sale. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have any questions or comments on that?
Just the conversation brings me to, it just amazes me back when we were in the 7, 8, and 9, when I went for listing interviews or appointments, we would ask on the phone before we even showed up what they owed on the house, and we compare it to what we thought the market was to see if it even, because you'd go on so many appointments where you couldn't help people, but that used to be a normal thing that we did. It's crazy.
Right. So, I don't want to touch too much on the hardship. It's in the paperwork. To Court's point earlier, it may easily change, right? Because we have the pandemic, but it's typically, and I highlighted it in here. Here's what I want to tell you. It's just on the 3rd page of what I sent out. When convincing a lender to agree to a short sale, it's vital that the source of the buyer's financial trouble be new. That's the #1 key. It needs to be new. It can't be something that they always did and they were okay and they had this problem when they qualified for the mortgage. It needs to be something new. And then I do believe the guidelines, I added this, that will change with the C-19. I'm told that they're going to be a little lighter versus tighter. And typically, though, it's major illness, job loss, death of the primary wage earner. But divorce and those kind of problems, they don't qualify as hardship. They're sorry someone's going through divorce, or if you have to relocate somebody to Canada and somebody in the States, and there's 2 mortgages, not their problem, right? You signed and agreed to a note. So I just take the time to read through some of this. I try to give a lot of information, but in short little bursts, so it's not overwhelming.
Hey, Terry, maybe you remember, or Amy, or some that have been around a little longer, I can't see everybody's on the call. What was it called? There was 2 different short sales, one in which the lender agreed to waive the shortage and not come after them and collect it. The other one says, we'll still do a short sale, so your foreclosure is not in your record, but we're coming after the difference. Do you remember the name of that?
It was just called forgiveness of difference of debt. And it's in this packet too. If you guys take a look, it'll teach everyone who wasn't in the market before the numbers, what to look for. And listen, what I gave you guys is whether you're trying to help a seller sell their home so that you help them avoid foreclosure. And I want you to learn how. And I could do a more in-depth workshop to kind of review this paperwork. It gives you opportunity to still feed your family and help them avoid foreclosure, and the why. Melinda's going to teach the why because of how long it takes your buyers to buy again. The banks can forgive the difference, but they don't have to. So you might still have to pay back a small portion or all of the portion. So there's many different options here. If you're helping an investor, that's in here too, on how to figure the ARV, the purchase price, the repair costs, the carrying costs. So I want you guys to be equipped, whether you have the buyer, the seller, or an investor, so you know how to operate in this what might be coming world. And I'm sure there's no way, like Jeremy said, the government's kind of giving us all a bear hug. That's not going to be forever. And there's going to be people that have to pay back their mortgages that they chose that forbearance with the CARES Act. So not all mortgages or lenders are created equally. Let me go back. I was trying to find out what Court was talking about too, to tell you what page it's on. The very last, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, before we do end, in case we are jumping off here soon, I want to try to be like Lori's husband and kind of be positive and annoying for a quick second. this whole thing we're talking about is simply a small sliver of the market. It's a small portion of the market if and when this happens. So just everybody understand that the market, the real estate market, is always going to be moving, even through bad times. People get married, people get divorced, people graduate college. Guess what? Interest rates are still amazing, and the cost of rent is high right now. So people want to be homeowners. So I think even if this does happen, I don't want everybody to think, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, because it's not. It's a small portion of, even in the worst times in 2008, the large majority of people were still homeowners, and they were still moving and still doing stuff. So anyway, I just want to leave it on a positive note so people don't think the sky is falling, because it's not.
Correct. And Amy, I'll get right back to you. And here's the thing. This is just a niche. This is just to teach you, if you're a veteran, you have military, then you should be working on VA loans. If your heart is first-time buyers, you should be focusing your niche on first-time buyers, and they know family and friends to give you other business. Maybe you like luxury and homes. I don't know. This is just a niche. The sky is not falling. This is how to capture more business than you might have had an opportunity to before today's workshop. And the last thing I want to read on that pandemic part is the mortgage relief due to COVID-19. And because of the CARES Act, it talks about the forbearance. And really, it says it right here. In addition, all federally backed mortgages, federally backed, so FHA, USDA, VA, not conventional, they're eligible for 6 months of forbearance with a 6-month extension of that, is what I mentioned. So we could be all the way to June of 2021 before we even have any conversation. But at the end of your forbearance period, the lender must discuss options for making up those payments. So if you guys are having family dinner conversation and somebody says, oh yeah, I took a forbearance, you know what? It doesn't hurt for you to look at them and say, hey, you know what, if that bank at the end of the day calls that note due and you have a problem, call me. I've got some stuff to share with you. Schedule a one-on-one. At least you are equipped. That's all my heart today was, to make sure you guys know what I know, so that you don't lose out on business, so that you can help people save their home. You're going to see in this packet, we talk about loan modifications. We talk about different ways to help them through should they be in a tough spot. Okay, Amy, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say how important it is and reiterate how important it is to stay positive. I think that's very, very important. I think people are looking to you for that. They need to see the light at the end of the tunnel. This real estate market is not crashing. Even when it did crash, we all still made a living through short sales. You had to work a lot harder for your paycheck, but we all still made a paycheck. So you're not going to be out of a job, but I think people are looking to you for positivity, for, that light, that hope that, not everything's going to come crumbling down. And these are options, and using the proper vocabulary, in front of people. That's just, it says if it does go into that and you're sitting in front of somebody that's losing their home, it's a sad situation. You should be sympathetic, but you should have your vocabulary lined up too, to use words that are aligned with providing that line of hope.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Good point. So that's why we want to talk about controlling the narrative, being educated, having those answers that you are comfortable with, that you have in your heart, that just roll off your tongue, so that you can be. And even if it's just to give hope that we can keep you out of foreclosure, or give you hope that we're probably not going to get in that same spot we were in 2008. There's just no way. There's not a mortgage meltdown, and there's so much equity in the homes, it's not going to be the same. People are not going to get upside down. I mean, it would take a long time to be out of work or unemployed to get in that position, and I think that's going to be the exception versus the norm. But I think
us as a community, real quick, I think us as a community too, I don't know what listing I was talking about. There was just a really negative situation when this COVID came, and I had a low ball offer on a $200,000 house or $300,000 house. It was like 100,000 under 200. And the agent wrote me multiple text messages back and forth. And she was just so caught up in the news and how the market was going to crash. And she was a negative Nelly. And I don't think that anyone in our real estate market should be doing that. Like nobody knew at that point. Don't be walking around educating your buyers that the market is crashing and take advantage of everybody. And she's probably still showing houses 6 months later, but to that same client, you know what I'm saying? Like, just don't be that negative. Don't believe the news. Don't be the fake news. Be positive. There's always an option. There's always an option. Even if you're saving them from foreclosure and they have to go through the short sale, it's still better than right. It's still, as I look at it, as an option. You're helping them. You're assisting them. All right, that's it.
Thanks, Amy. Jeremy, I'll be right with you. Real quick, I just want to ask you guys if you looked at the handout. I wanted to talk about the marketing. I can tell you from living that life, and I mean in the trenches working for a broker, that's all we did. I saw a lot of pain. All I want to say to you guys, when you're marketing, try to keep it light. Try to keep it showing kindness, generosity. If I'm going to open up a flyer you're sending me and it just goes stop foreclosure, I might like throw that in the trash. It's never even going to hit the house because I don't want my kids or my husband to know or whatever, right? But if you do some of the cute fun, like don't give up. I love the one I sent on the dice with the soul. I just wrote some things at the bottom, some ideas that I did back when I used to market through that time. Just hold on to it in case you ever need it. I like the don't roll the dice and take a chance on losing your home to foreclosure. We don't play games with the sale of your home. All right, that's just one of my marketing. The other, I love the cute little guy standing on the house, holding up the sign that says help. And like, is your home underwater? I don't think that's going to be one we're going to need. I just don't. Again, I think that's going to be the exception. But my little thing is below that is, are you struggling to stay afloat? So again, I did one a little bit more direct because I know all the men are not as mushy as me, right? So maybe the guys want to be a little bit more direct with like, don't be a victim, right? Like I could see this being a Mike Everman. Being more direct, but I just wanted to share that with you guys. And Jeremy, before we go, you're up.
Well, I didn't really have anything too important. I was just reiterating that, I don't believe any of us have crystal balls here, but at the very beginning of the meeting, we were just sharing predictions. And so, I mean, that's what could happen down the future. It may or may not. But yeah, if someone's asking how's the market right now, I mean, it is a seller's market. It is booming. Inventory is low, but if you're a buyer, it's competitive. We just got to be prepared and go find what we're looking for. I mean, our predictions that we made at the beginning kind of seem gloomy and depressing, but no, I mean, real estate is booming. I mean, my goodness, seller's market, listings are gold. And I mean, that's basically exactly what Court and Amy were saying, but just not to be confused with the beginning of our meeting, because that was different than what the real estate market is doing.
Well, sure, absolutely. We still have buyer frustration and lots of offers to write for a buyer. But again, this was very proactive. I had shared with Court and Debbie probably 3 months ago, you guys, that I wanted to do this workshop because I like to always be way ahead of the curve. So you might not need it, honest to God, for 6 to 12 months, if ever. But if you do, now you have it in your tool belt.
Can we all congratulate Grandpa Bill for the birth of Michael?
We can. We did earlier too. Yay.
Congratulations, Grandpa.
Thank you very much. He's doing good. He's off oxygen, and he used to be with mom in the hospital a little bit, and then they take him back and check on him. So he's doing good.
That's awesome. And so I might as well tell everybody here, because Court or I are going to send out an email, that because of Michael came about a month early, he just couldn't wait to get out. They're going to keep him in the hospital for a little bit, make sure all of his numbers look good. And so Debbie's going to be working from home, but from home in Indiana for at least a few days. So she won't physically be here Monday, Wednesday like she has been, but we'll know more. And I'll be sending out an email. Very cool. Well, thank you guys so much. Anybody have anything else they want to add or question? I
just want to say thank you to everybody for showing up and making this a priority and being here to contribute. That was good. It made me smile seeing all the faces.
All the predictions.
I know I smile on the outside. I mean, on the inside. I don't smile on the outside a lot.
Can you work on that? It used to be on your goals. Smile more, remember?
Oh my
It is. I got some, the coach, that was the theme, was the affirmation challenges. And so that's where I'm working.
Joe said he can help